Captain, we have them! We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek Discovery podcast. Join Ken and Sabriel each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello and welcome to Transporter Lock episode number 75 for April 2021. I'm your co-host, Chief Engineer Ken Gagney.
And I am Captain Sabriel Maston.
Hello, Captain. How are you? It's been so many months.
I'm doing well. Shore leave is getting a little long, but hey.
I don't know. I don't think I can ever get enough of Risa.
So today, we're here to see how many minutes we can squeeze out of over 2 minutes of new Star Trek.
It's true. There was a lot of new content released this past April 5th, which is, of course, First Contact Day. Did you have the traditional meal of pierogies? Is that from Cochrane's favorite?
No, a bottle of scotch or Jack Daniels or whatever he was drinking. I was drinking that day.
I mean, we're in a pandemic. You can't go wrong.
That's right.
Yeah, there were so many panels and discussions on First Contact Day. I confess, I watched almost none of it. What about you?
I was not able to watch live, and I kind of skimmed through some of the stuff post. So there's a few glints of information there about the trailers that we saw and teasers. 2 teasers and a trailer. But mostly, I mean, it was kind of cool. It was cool. It's always cool just to see the Star Trek actors talking, doing their thing. It's very interesting seeing Picard and a major figure we'll talk about shortly talk about the next season of Picard.
Yeah, there were actual trailers with footage from the new seasons for Season 2 of Lower Decks coming out in August of 2021, 1 year since Season 1 debuted. There was an actual trailer with footage from Discovery Season 4, which is going to debut late 2021, which I presume will be after Lower Decks ends, just like it did last year. And then there was a teaser with not actual footage from the show for Season 2 of Picard, which is coming in 2022. And we are here today to talk about all 3, to briefly summarize and also maybe make some predictions so that we can come back to this podcast a year or 2 from now and just find out how wrong we were.
And if New Trek is any indication, we're going to be very wrong because they are very tight-lipped, even when the show is airing about what's actually going on.
It's true. We've made so many predictions on the show before. Sometimes we're right, like The Guardian of Forever or The Mirror Universe, or, hey, he's actually a Klingon. Sometimes we're really wrong. So it's fun nonetheless to just make our best guesses based on our combined decades of Star Trek experience and see where the show takes us.
Yeah, so we talk about Lower Decks. This is the one I have literally 5 words to say.
Ooh. What are the 5 words, Sabriel?
Boimler is on the Titan.
Boimler is on the... That's 5 words. Good job.
All right, that's all I had for Lower Decks. Cool. It was clearly continuing on Star Trek The Reference. Or Star Trek The References.
Yes. Yeah, the Lower Decks trailer, well, the show itself is not as serial as Picard and Discovery. Like, there is a loose arc from the beginning of Season 1 to the end of Season 1, but there are a lot of episodes you can watch out of order or stand alone as well, and so it makes it hard to do a trailer for an entire season when there's no one thing you're trying to capture. I mean, we saw the return of some Cardassians, we saw you're going to know this better than me, the sport that Riker played with his dad.
Yeah, what was that called
like
again?
Jiu-Jitsu squares or something?
Yeah. I mean, we saw a rainbow lightsaber type thing. I don't know. And
yeah, that was the captain just like spinning around with his arms outstretched, and
yeah,
that was weird.
Yeah, and that's Lower Decks for you.
We saw Rutherford has his eye implant restored, and it looks a little perhaps more high-tech, a little bit more lower tech, a little bit more pixelated, because you recall it was torn out of him at the end of the last season.
Yeah.
And Boimler, as you said, is on the Titan, which also means that Jonathan Frakes is back with the voice of William T. Riker.
That was fun, hearing him talk about his little music references. I couldn't even tell you what it means, but I know those words are music related.
Yeah, they were in some sort of a space fight, and he said that this jam session has too many licks and not enough chops or something. And Boimler's like, what does that even mean? And I was saying, what does that even mean? Because it meant nothing to me. And I don't know that Riker would actually talk like that in such a situation.
Oh no, it's total parody of Star Trek. It's total parody mode.
This is true. I mean, even the characters that we know from more serious circumstances are caricatures of themselves when it comes to Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Like Q last season. Oh, Picard, he's always quoting Shakespeare and making wine. Speaking of which, we will get to that, but we're going chronologically here. Anything else to say about Lower Decks?
Yeah, I'm more excited about it than when season 1 came out, just because season 1 actually started to interest me.
Yeah, we now know more about what to expect from Lower Decks. It's less of an unknown variable. So I too am looking forward to it, but not as much as I am to the other 2 shows that they teased this past week.
Yeah.
Including Discovery Season 4. We have a trailer for that. We see that they are still in the future. There's some sort of a big bad that we do not know the nature of, other than that it either is or creates a gravitational anomaly 5 light years in width. And we got to see a lot of different characters and a lot of different scenes. What did you think about this teaser, Sabriel?
Yeah, honestly, none of the trailers really made me go, "Oh yes!" And this one is no different. Like, okay, Discovery gets its butt kicked over really bad. Okay, some anomaly, some universe-ending anomaly. Looks like it's happening again. Saru is going to put on a command uniform again for some reason. And I really don't like the new uniforms. Maybe they'll grow on me.
Wait, what about them?
I really don't like them, but maybe they'll grow on me.
Oh, okay.
But to me, I was like, okay, I think Discovery just really burned me the most on the teasing of what could be happening when it's not what happened at all. Like, just dragging it on so long. And so I'm like, okay, all right, I'm just going to watch it anyway. Like, it didn't do anything. The thing that surprised me the most of this trailer is that it said we're going to get Discovery Season 4 in 2021.
Yeah, usually we have more than a 1-year wait between seasons, and now they're restoring almost a traditional TV-like frequency where one season begins a year after the previous season began.
Yeah. Oh, what did you think with regard to the trailer? Or anything stand out you want to mention?
I did notice the uniforms, how at the end of season 3, Burnham was wearing a gray uniform, and now she's wearing a red one, which is more traditional from like TOS era. Why did you not like that, if I may ask?
No, it's the design themselves. The color, sure, cool, but they just seemed so plain.
They looked a little bulky to me, almost like the formal or ceremonial wear that Picard would wear.
Yeah, maybe it almost looks like they're wearing foam.
I don't know, that sounds kind of comfy.
Maybe it is. And like I said, maybe it'll grow on me because it was my first real glimpse at the new stuff. Mm-hmm. But my first reaction was, okay, I guess.
But also, this is like, there are now 4 seasons of Discovery, or there will be, and this will be the 4th style of uniform that the Discovery crew will have worn. And I'm like, okay, I do believe that Starfleet might change their fashion that often, but given what we saw in season 3, they have bigger priorities. And although the Starfleet and the Federation is going through a massive transformation right now, so maybe they want to harken back to its founding days, so maybe I get that. But also, B, this just makes it harder to retcon stuff later.
Right.
Like when they met the Enterprise at the end of season 1 and going into season 2, they're like, oh, how come you're wearing different uniforms than us? And they're like, I don't know, this is what Roddenberry had us wearing in the 60s. What are you wearing?
Anyway. One thing I did notice in the trailer is it looks like you're going to see the modern day Kelpian planet up close. There was some very watery, seaweedy design in some of the sets that Saru was in.
I did notice that Saru was in the trailer. That's what I paid more attention to because, of course, he left Discovery at the end of season 3. I didn't notice the setting in which we saw him, and you believe that's the Kelpian homeworld.
I suspect. I don't say I would believe, but it sure felt like that.
Huh. Well, that would be interesting because, as we saw at the end of season 3, Kaminar has changed a lot in the last 1,000 years, and they were even part of the Federation at some point. So it would be interesting to see how Saru is navigating this time-displaced homeworld he now finds himself in.
Yeah.
Let's see. So that 5 light-year gravitational anomaly, the one thing that concerns me, well, actually, before I get to what concerns me, I'll tell you what it reminds me of is 2 things. One is Star Trek 4, where this giant, I don't know, sensor array or something just drifts into Federation space from nowhere, and it's huge, and it's disrupting everything on the planet. That sounds kind of like what Discovery is encountering as well. And I don't think it's actually the same thing. I'm just saying that's what it's reminiscent of in terms of threat.
Yeah, a big, huge existential threat. I just tweeted this out, but like, New Trek really seems to love its universe-shattering events.
Yeah, actually, that's the concern I was going to get to, is that when you have a big bad every season, and you start off with one of them being like galaxy-threatening, there's nowhere to go but up from there, or there's nowhere to go at all. And so you have to keep having these massive threats like, oh my gosh, the Federation has been destroyed. Oh my gosh, AI is going to destroy all life. Oh my gosh. I'm like, it gets a little exhausting after a while.
Yeah, I mean, even Picard had the, oh my gosh, some big universal alien thing is going to come destroy all sentient life.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a marvel that life continues at all, because you would think if existential crises happen like 3 times a year, just by the odds, one of them is eventually going to succeed.
Different timelines, I guess. But I'll talk more about that in Picard. But yeah, man, like, it's okay to just have the threat. I mean, they kind of did it with Disco season 4, but not also, or 3, I mean. But there was a local threat, which also was kind of, come on, just give me a good old like Picard. There are 4 lights. Character building 2-parter with Captain Jellicoe and Picard.
Yeah, or give me an episode where like Data learns to dream.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get some character development. They always do it, but it doesn't always have to be universal ending things.
But speaking of character development, I read an article with the actor who plays Paul Stamets, and he said that how his character would get to have some interactions in the next season with a character he has not normally interacted with that much before. And this article said, well, there are some characters that's clearly not, like Burnham, although I imagine that the 2 of them are still sort of at odds after last season. So the article is positing that Stamets will probably have more scenes with either Book or Saru.
My first thought was Saru, but Book too, I guess. So it also makes sense. Yeah, like 1 scene with him last season.
Yeah, the one where Book's like, oh, I read the manual on how the starship works, and I think this will work. Like, oh, okay. So he clearly has some engineering aptitude, and it makes sense for him to be in that section of the Discovery more often, and thus encountering either Jet Reno, who I really want to see more of, or Paul Stamets. But, yeah, it could be Saru. The only other comment I had about this trailer was going back to the uniforms. The episode or the trailer opened with Burnham in an outdoor exosuit, and it was lit up along the perimeter in a way that was very reminiscent of Tron. I don't know if they showed that particular spacesuit in previous seasons, but it stuck out to me this time. And I love Tron, and I don't actually think she's going to be digitized and sent into a computer.
No, that was totally I caught that too. That's cool. Hopefully they will have to fight Clue and maybe we'll get maybe this will be Tron Part 3.
I would love some Star Trek light cycles. That would be amazing. Imagine if the Discovery is flying around in space, leaving a trail behind it for other ships to crash into.
Yeah. Oh, so
See?
cool.
And actually, that reminds me that we didn't see any glimpses, as far as I caught in this trailer, of the little robot that Control now inhabits.
Yeah, we don't have any the dots. Yeah.
Dots, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, but again, like, who knows if they're going to squeeze in a minute-long trailer.
Right.
There were lots of scenes of showing Discovery getting its butt kicked, or had gotten its butt kicked. Like, there's one where they're walking on the ceiling of a cargo bay that we've never seen before. There's one where Michael is on the bridge alone in a space, just a very damaged bridge alone in a spacesuit. Like,
Yes.
a lot of the scenes are like reminiscent of other Star Treks.
Yeah, there was one scene where they were all just sort of standing around looking at wreckage, and at first I thought it was the bridge, but then I realized it was a cargo bay. So they must have maybe pulled something in with their tractor beam and are now examining the wreckage. So maybe it used to be a ship, and they're like, "This is all that's left." Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and it was like it was a new set. It was something we hadn't seen before.
Yeah. Well, I would hope so. Although, you know what? Speaking of new sets and how quickly the season is coming, it's impressive that they were able to put all this together during a pandemic.
I know, right? Like, I remember them not talking about filming last year.
Yeah.
Towards the end of, I think they were just about to start filming when we finished season 3.
Wow.
And that's why I was like so shocked that season 4 is almost here, relatively.
I don't actually know how Hollywood works, but I would assume at the point they're showing trailers that all the principal shooting is done and now they're mostly in post-production editing.
Seems plausible to me.
So the fact that they got all, I presume, like 12 or 14 episodes shot in the time between when season 3 ended, which was just 3 months ago, and now, that's impressive.
You know what? To me, like, I don't think we saw much for practical effects other than a few shots, like CG shots, of other ships around Disco. I bet you that's what the phase is right now, is CG touch up, and again, like you said, post production. But like, that's what's being worked on right now.
Cool. All right. Anything else to say about Discovery?
Nope. It's
okay.
Cool. All right. Like, I mean, they're minute-long trailers. I don't have much to say.
Yeah. And finally, the third show, which had the teaser, and that is similar to how season 1 of Picard debuted. It showed him walking around his vineyard and loading up crates of wine, and that was not actually in the show itself. We similarly got a teaser for Picard season 2 with a lot of footage that showed no actual people. It was mostly just the exterior and interior of his vineyard with voiceovers and a few special effects. And here's the big reveal. Sabriel, who's coming back?
Yeah, John Delancey is reprising his role as Q in person instead of a cartoon.
That's right. Unlike in Lower Decks, now he's actually going to be in season 2 of Picard, where Picard says the final dimension, the final frontier, is time. Time. What do we think that means?
Literal, honestly. I think literal. We saw that the teaser was showing his office and things that would be typically in Picard's office. I think most of them were red herrings, but there were 2 that I thought were interesting. One was the Stargazer. And the reason the Stargazer is because the exact same moment it zooms in on it, Picard talks about regrets, kind of thing, like wishing things had gone differently. And 2, the Reckoning tablet from Deep Space Nine that Cisco shattered and released a Pa-Wraith and a Prophet to have a reckoning on the promenade of DS9 is for some reason in Picard's office.
Yes.
And getting what I think that these could mean are, for some reason, Picard is trying to gain an understanding of time or some aspect of it for some reason. And with these non-corporeal beings and Q showing up again, there could be some connection.
So you think that a journey through time might not just be something thrust upon him by Q, but rather something that he is pursuing, something he's trying to achieve. And so he has his own independent study and research into this topic with which Q intersects.
More accurately, I think that something has to do with time and some big shattering event, not that he has to travel through it. Like season 1 was more of it was also a discovery in being old and looking back at yourself. Like, he had to come to terms with a terminal illness, and I think they're going to continue the theme of being old, and this one having to look back at your past. I mean,
isn't that what the TNG episode Tapestry was about?
Yeah. Now I can explore it more now that Patrick Stewart actually is old. I think he has more of an interest in this.
I'm wondering what it means that Q says the trial never ends, because we know that that is the first and last episode of TNG, but I wonder how that now ties into Picard. Is humanity again going to be threatened? Is this another existential crisis?
I mean, that's what I assume because New Trek loves this theme. I suspect it also has to do with some after death, post death, because Picard is dead. I suspect it has to do with some themes like that. Of course, it will be in some huge sci-fi wrapper.
Yeah.
The one thing, they didn't tease any spoilers they made a tease. Patrick Stewart made a tease about when does Q appear.
When does he appear?
He said, Patrick Stewart says, it was some truly shattering moment.
Oh, yes, that's right. I did see that interview.
Specific wording was, and he wouldn't say anything more than that or expand on what that means. So something happens to Picard that is very shattering, or in the plot. And all I could think of was like time shatters, or Picard has a major, huge problem, and then Q is like, let's pause for a moment. I bet you're wondering how I got this way.
Record scratch. It reminds me of the Voyager episode, whose name I'm not going to remember right now, where every deck was a different time period.
Shattered, I think.
You know, I thought that's what it was, but when I looked up Shattered in Memory Alpha, that's the name of an episode of Deep Space Nine. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Shattered Mirror is DS9. You are right. Voyager is Shattered. You're right. Season 7, episode 11, different time zones.
Yeah, we got Seska back.
That's right. That was fun.
And Borg 7.
So I wonder if Picard is going to be encountering different time periods. And speaking of which, John Delancey's older now. And I'm wondering if he'll encounter the same issue that Brent Spiner did, where their characters don't age. In that same interview you were referring to, where, by the way, John Delancey, he had some sort of an instrumentation on the wall behind him. And at the end of the interview, Will Wheaton said, "Thank you for calling in from your boat."
Like, I thought it was something like that.
I had no idea. I was like, that's cool. Okay, Q as a boat. So John Delancey joked. He's like, oh, in order to better acclimate into humanity and give them the vision that they expect to see, I've aged my visage. So Q looks older, even though he himself is timeless. And I'm like, okay, on one hand, John Delancey, you're bullshitting us. On the other hand, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah. That's what I figure they're going to go for. Like, oh, Picard, you've gotten older here. And then...
Right. Yeah, there's so much going on in this trailer, even though it is short, even though it's a lot of red herrings. I remember when we watched season 1, episode 1 of Picard, and he was playing cards with Data, and there were a lot of queens in the deck, in the hands that they were playing, and you and I were theorizing that it represented certain androids, like how they come in pairs in last season. And this time, there's again a queen playing card, and it burns up until just the Q is left. And I'm thinking, is this what they were going for all along in season 1? And if not, we never did figure out exactly what those queens meant in season 1.
You know what? I bet you that they left it vague so they could use it in the future if they wanted to. Honestly, you do a lot of the stuff where you look back at when these TV shows, like especially Marvel, because they had so many shows. I think I mentioned it before. Like, things will be alluded to or referenced or a side nod, and they'll just like, oh, we can use that, and then write it into the current thing. It would not surprise me if it was intentional or not.
That's true. You know, I just was rewatching season 1 of The Good Place. Technically, what I'm doing is reading the script from season 1 of The Good Place. And there was this one line that I didn't think anything of when I first saw the show, but then I realized that's the entire plot for season 3. And I'm like, they must have architected this storyline that far in advance that they knew that this was coming, and they just wedged it in there. That's really awesome. Yeah, the Reckoning tablet, that is strange to me, because in season 3 of Discovery, set 1,000 years in the future, we never actually met the president of the Federation. And there were some theories online, in my opinion, rather unfounded, that the president would prove to be Benjamin Sisko. And that has not come to pass, but then they throw in this DS9 reference into Picard, and I'm like, first of all, I can't imagine Avery Brooks ever coming back to this role. But second of all, why would they just put the Reckoning tablet there?
Yeah, that's weird. And it wasn't even mentioned specifically with time. That's why I went with the non-corporeal being thing. Because that's what the prophets love that term.
Yeah, who do you think would win in a fight, the prophets or Q?
I have no basis to judge that. It is beyond my scope.
But you're all-knowing, Captain Sabriel.
Mm-hmm. That's why. I just know better than to answer. That's why.
And even the Stargates are like, yeah, maybe that too is a red herring. But we did see it in season 1 of TNG, and not a lot since. Does Picard have many regrets around that ship, other than losing it?
I think that's where Jack Crusher died, if I recall correctly.
Oh, that's right.
Friend of the show, Shar, and I were talking a little bit on our little chat, and we kept bringing up hypotheses and ideas, but we kept coming up with well, they already did this in an episode, so it's either going to revisit some themes, like if they went and explored a regret of Picard, like they did that already with his artificial heart episode.
Mm-hmm.
If they played around with an anti-time anomaly kind of thing, or time isn't working right, they did that with the finale.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's got to be something new. It's going to be something we just don't know yet.
And they have to stretch it out across an entire season.
Yeah, and maybe Key only shows up for one episode. We don't know.
Right, and what does he do with that one episode? Does he give Picard the ability to travel through time? Because that is, as you said, almost exactly what they did with All Good Things, the series finale for TNG.
Yeah, and then oh, I lost it. Never mind. It'll come back in an inopportune moment.
Great. Yeah, because at the end of Tapestry, he was moving between the 3 time periods almost at will, but he was always himself. He was always occupying a manifestation of Picard that already existed in that time period. So what would be new, at least as far as Picard goes, is being able to actually bodily shift himself to new time periods, or quantum leap style. And you know what? Scott Bakula, when he left through time, we as the viewers always saw him as himself. But if we're concerned about Picard being old, one way to get around that would be to say, oh, here's this different actor in a time period, and Picard is inhabiting his body, so it's really him, but we see him as this other actor.
Riker did it with the chef in Enterprise, even. I remember what I was going to say. And Picard makes a reference to time never gives you second chances. Technically true, but in Star Trek, we know that people take second chances out of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, unless you have some third-party intervention or some ancient alien artifact, Picard's words are true. Time is very linear. It goes in one direction at one speed only. But if that were actually true, we wouldn't have the Department of Temporal Investigations.
Right. And awesome. So, yeah, in short, I think the teaser was a lot of red herrings, but a few things that were going to be related.
Yeah. Have we made about any of these 3 shows any actual predictions?
Well, no, mine we're going to have some. They're very vague, but intentional. That means I'm right. Universe ending threats in both of them, in some meaning. Let's see. What else did I write here? Saru is going to be asked to fill in some leader role on Disco temporarily because someone had to make sure they reassured Michael that Michael was still in charge. Modern Kelpians. Disco's nearly destroyed, but ... But yeah, they didn't give us much to go on, so I'm just kind of throwing things out there for fun.
Well, here's one more. Season 3 of Discovery began with time travel. It's implied that season 2 of Picard will have time travel. Are we going to see a Picard Discovery crossover?
I did think about that too, if the villain was going to be the same thing. Then I was like, then that would be Anti-time anomaly thing happening all over again. The TNG finale happening all over again, where you fight same thing in different time areas. So I was like,
Except these two shows are not going to overlap. It would not be impossible, but it would be odd if Discovery Season 4 ended and said to be continued in Picard Season 2.
Oh, I agree.
Because they so far have not required that you watch all the Star Trek that's coming out.
It just says and then Disco had a reference to the Romulan
2009 movie.
Oh, that too, but Disco had the reference to the thing invented for Picard, the Romulan sect of...
Oh, wait, what? Oh, that's right. The Kalar Kalath or whatever. Yep. No, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. That's true.
And it's funny, if you listen to the interviews, they had no idea what it was. Disco people didn't.
So they didn't watch Picard either.
Well, it hadn't been out yet.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, cool.
Bulan Udat.
It's fine. It's fine. We don't know what it is either. Why should we?
It's on the tip of my tongue, and someone's gonna get a friend.
I mean, it's in the show notes for our previous podcast. But you know what? So I think we've worked with all we've been given so far for the 3 trailers and teasers that came out this past week. But there is some news that just came out yesterday that we would be remiss to not at least acknowledge, which is that June 9th, 2023, at this moment, is the release date for the next Star Trek movie.
Cool. Thank you, StarTrek.com and Paramount for dishing out such bountiful amounts of information.
Yeah, that's all we have is a date, and we don't know what it's going to be about. We don't know who's going to be in it. There are a lot of theories right now. It could be a continuation of the 3 J.J. Abrams Kelvin Universe movies starring Christopher Pine, although it will have been 14 years between when the first film came out and this one, so the characters will be much older, and unfortunately one of the characters won't be with us anymore. It could be the Quentin Tarantino film that was being floated around out there. This article I'm reading on Collider.com says there was also a potential movie being drafted by Fargo showrunner Noah Hawley, which I did not know about.
Oh, yeah.
And I think somebody pointed out to me that the new Star Trek movie has it's being produced by J.J. Abrams, who of course made the previous 3 films. So that would imply it's in the same universe. But here's one more thing. When those movies came out, and Bree, correct me if I'm wrong, that was at a time that CBS and Paramount were still somewhat separate entities. One had the Star Trek movie universe, the other had the rights to the Star Trek TV universe, and never shall the twain cross. Now that they've been unified, I don't understand why they would maintain separate timelines and separate universes. This seems like an opportunity to create a movie that is set in the same universe as all the media that they are now churning out for the streaming service Paramount Plus.
You already said what I was going to say. You answered your own question. I mean, J.J. Abrams right now is not the hottest ticket in Hollywood after Star Wars episode 9.
Yeah.
No, 6, 9.
Oh, you got it.
And produced does not necessarily mean directed by. He can just be funding it, or helping fund it, or lend his experienced ear to the project. But yeah, I would agree. Like, this could be it would be neat if this was a send off for the Kelvin crew, or but I think Paramount and CBS are like, whoa, maybe if we don't keep Berman in charge, fandom or people who are burned out in charge, maybe people like Star Trek again.
Mm-hmm. And just to be clear, that's Rick Berman, not Michael Burnham.
Oh, yes. That's a whole other show to talk about Rick Berman and that era.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential here. Even the Collider.com article I'm reading is saying that they're hoping for a reboot. And I'm like, I really don't want that. I don't want to see familiar characters being recast. I don't want another universe or timeline. And yet, if they don't do that, how do they make this not just a long episode of the Star Trek we're already getting? It's confusing.
Yeah. I mean, it'll probably be neat to see, but right now my kind of mental state is like, do we need a movie?
Yeah, actually, you know what? That's a good question. When the J.J. Abrams movies came out, it was the first Star Trek we'd had in many years, and for a long time it was the only Star Trek we were getting. Now we have a cornucopia of Star Trek. So what does a movie add that we are not already getting? Although TOS was making feature films while TNG was airing.
Yeah. But different stories, completely different stories.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, I can see it as a way to just get people interested in subscribing to Paramount Plus.
What, the movie you mean?
Yeah. It's gotta be something to connect that, so people are like, huh, they have the Star Trek on the TV again. I'm gonna go give my exorbitant amount of money to yet another subscription service.
And also, they'll need to come up with another existential crisis.
Yeah, man, how many ways can the universe end?
And this isn't like the days of Star Trek 2, where it's just Picard versus Khan, and the universe is not at risk.
Yeah.
It's very one-to-one. Well, we still haven't seen the Borg in any of these new shows. I mean, yes, Picard Season 1 had a dead cube, but Q's the one who introduced Picard to the Borg, and there was a short story in one of the Star Trek Strange New World anthology books where the Borg built what was, I believe, called a hypercube. It was a cube so big that by being in orbit around Earth, it exerted a gravitational pull that threatened to tear the planet apart.
Star Trek 4.
Again, similar, yes. So what if this 5 light-year gravitational pull that Discovery is exhibiting is the Borg, and Picard and Q are responsible for it, because if it weren't for Q, the Borg wouldn't know about humanity, and somehow it all ties together, and both shows will end with, to be concluded in theaters near you.
Maybe, but the Discovery era feature really didn't seem too concerned about the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah, the Delta Quadrant or artificial intelligence or... Anyway. Oh, by the way, you know what? There was one more piece of news this past week, a little bit about Star Trek Prodigy and Captain Janeway. Did you notice that?
I did catch a little bit of that. Wow. I said Captain Janeway is just really excited to come back and play Captain Janeway.
Kate Mulgrew?
Thank you. I kept thinking Catherine. Kate Mulgrew is really, really happy to be playing Captain Janeway again in a hologram form in a Nickelodeon show, and really excited at the prospect of getting children interested in Star Trek. I think watching her joy over that in the panels was just really wholesome.
She's a hologram?
Yeah, it's going to be a hologram.
Oh, I didn't know that. Although that would explain why the still I saw, not animated, but still, she looked roughly the same age as she was in Voyager.
Yep, that's why.
Okay. She was saying in an interview that the original design for the animated Captain Janeway was too beautiful. And I don't know if she was being tongue-in-cheek, but I do think that she has a point that not every character has to be flawless, because that's just not realistic and it sends the wrong message.
I agree.
Yeah. So that seems like the sort of thing that Kate Mulgrew would stand up for. All right, so we have talked about Lower Decks Season 2, Discovery Season 4, Picard Season 2, a movie coming out in 2023, and Prodigy, which is coming out next year?
I don't remember the date, actually.
Well, you know what? We'll just make it up. Let's say next year.
In 2040,
no.
It will be out still. It will still be out.
I don't know, unless it gets put in a moratorium and locked away in the Disney vault or something.
Yep.
It goes the way of Mario 35. So, anyway. Anything else to add, Captain?
I think we did pretty dang well. 40 or so minutes on 2 minutes of new Star Trek.
I mean, that is the hallmark of a nerd podcast, where you can talk longer about the media than the media is. Awesome. So this is going to be... I mean, we took the last 3 months off because there wasn't anything new to talk about. We don't know when there will be anything else new to talk about now until at least August, which is when I think which is when I know Lower Decks is going to premiere. So we might have the next 4 months off, but you can always find us on our website, transporterlock.com. Reach out to us on Twitter. We have the official Transporter Lock Twitter handle @TransporterLock, but there's also Captain and I have our own personal accounts you're welcome to reach out to as well. Captain here is Sabriality, and I'm Gamebits. Links are, of course, in the show notes at transporterlock.com. Captain Sabriel, anything else to add to our listeners?
I've been thinking about changing my Twitter name, so just go to sabriel.gay. It'll bring you to the right place.
I am so happy that you have that domain. It is so perfect.
Other than that, that's all I got.
On that note,
hit it.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter @TransporterLock or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.